Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today on Chapter by Chapter, we are continuing on with King of Scars. And we have made it to Chapter 17, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, since there's 39 altogether, but we are going places. We are getting into the meat of this book.
Such a creep.
So let's jump on in. Chapter 17 is a Nikolai chapter, and I'm still not the biggest fan of his chapters, but I'm dying to know what's happening in this freaky place. Since their skiff isn't in the best shape, the Sands are just carrying Nikolai, Yuri, and Zoya to the palace. It is making Nikolai's stomach turn. Nikolai really prides himself on adapting easily to every situation, being able to come up with fast plans and think of how to get out of situations, but he doesn't know what's going on here.
Like the rest of us.
But, his whole understanding of the natural world was smashed in one afternoon, so we can't really fault the guy. Of course, Juris notices right away that Nikolai is feeling a little bit of discomfort, which leads to Nikolai saying, hey, why don't you give us a ride on your back instead? Juris said only if he returns the favor. These guys could just go back and forth forever on a good day. And I can only imagine what it was like if Zoya was feeling okay again. It would just be too much banter. As they're approaching the palace, Nikolai realizes that this would have taken thousands of years to even just imagine, let alone build. The towers are
huge.
All of the towers were clustered around three major ones. There was one of black stone, one out of what Nikolai said was glowing amber, which is probably honey, and one of bone. He saw no signs of life as he was looking around. There were no birds circling, there weren't people walking by windows, there weren't people guarding the castle itself. It felt more like a tomb. So Nikolai asks if anyone is even there, and the grotesque answers that nobody's been there for about 400 years. When they get there, they enter this wide, circular chamber, and the sand beneath their feet starts to turn to stone. In the center of the room, this table just kind of comes up from the floor, and it has this milky geode in the middle, which seems pretty cool. I'd like that table. And then the stone chairs just emerge around it. Elizaveta tells them, all we really have to offer you is this chair to sit on. We can't offer you any food or drink here. Nikolai's like, I'll settle for some answers. And I'm just like, how would you be right now if this was happening to you? I would just think I was dead. I would think that none of this is real. I don't know how they're comprehending what's going on. And of course, Yuri doesn't sit with them. He's still on his knees, praying, mumbling in some type of old Ravkin. All Nikolai can really make out is, some words here and there like promise, foretold, darkness.
Yuri's all about the darkness.
Elizaveta's like, please stop. Like, he's making everyone obviously uncomfortable. This is awkward, especially for them. Juris is like, just let him go. He's really enjoying his own belittlement. It's Juris who asks them, so where would you like us to begin? And Nikolai says, with who the hell you are. Juris thinks that they already covered this, but Nikolai doesn't understand. In order to achieve sainthood, you have to be martyred, and they're all looking kind of alive right now. Unless this is heaven, and Nikolai says, well, I'm either severely underdressed or my idea of heaven is not what I thought. We know Zoya's really not okay right now because Juris makes a comment after that, like, he really talks a lot, doesn't he? And she doesn't say anything. She's just looking up at the sky. Elizaveta said they did all die at some time or another, but they were reborn, and not quite as they were. Like, we can tell from the grotesque, who I feel awful calling him the grotesque. Like, I don't think he was that way in life. We would have heard about that. She goes on to say, you can call us what you like, Grisha, saints. Juris interrupts and he's like, we're relics. And Elizaveta does not like this at all. And out of nowhere, Yuri yells,
oh, that was promise.
He's really making things awkward for everyone right now. Elizaveta, is super annoyed by this, and she goes over to him and she takes one of her vines from her dress and she wraps it around Yuri. And all he does is embarrass himself even more. He just grabs it and rubs his face into the leaves. And he's weeping. We just gotta go with it. Finally, Nikolai asks a pretty important question. Where are they exactly? And they are in
the Shadow Fold. What?
So we're told by the grotesque, who finally is given a name of Grigory, Saint Grigory to be exact. Nikolai can kind of remember that he was torn apart by bears, but that does not explain his current condition at all. So they are in a version of the shadow fold that they can't escape. Zoya finally talks and she's like, what does this matter anyway? Why were they even brought there to begin with? Juris just continues to be an asshole. He's like,
oh, look how the little witch mourns.
And I haven't listened to this part of the audiobook yet, but I'm guessing he has that like Ravkan accent. And he asks her, do you even know what you lost or what you stand to gain? Nikolai's expecting to see Zoya just go off on Juris, tear his head off, tell him off like she would normally do. But Nikolai's pretty concerned because she just sits there and just stares up at the sky again.
She is not okay.
Zoya's behavior actually freaks out Nikolai more than what is going on around them. This is not her. Elizaveta is at least a lot kinder than Juris. She tells Zoya that she wishes she could have brought them anywhere else. And then we start to get a lot of information about this place and these Grisha/saints.
Grisha are saints confirmed.
Not clickbait. Elizaveta goes on to say, they were Grisha before the word was even mentioned, when extraordinary things were still called magic and miracles. They all lived lives so long that it could dwarf the history of Ravka itself. And this particular spot on the fold is holy. It's a holy site. Yuri was right all along. This sacred site was where their power was at their greatest, and they were the most deeply connected to the heart of the world, and here anything was possible. It was that exact spot that they were bound to when the Darkling created the fold. And I'm just like taking in all this information, trying to figure out what is happening. Like, I get it. I'm reading it. I'm comprehending it. But also, what is happening? This even makes Zoya be like, what? What are we talking about? Elizaveta goes on to tell them that they are woven into the very fabric of the world in a way that no other Grisha are. And the thread woven into that is only tightened by them using their power and them being there for so long. So when the Darkling tampered with the natural order of the world, they were drawn to that. And when that all failed, they were trapped within the boundaries of the fold. They can't leave or take any physical form any other place but there. Juris is like, what physical form? We don't eat, we don't sleep, doesn't remember what it's like to sweat or be hungry or dream. Said he would chop off his left wing just to hear his stomach growl or taste wine or take a piss out a window, which I didn't realize people pissed out windows, so news to me, thank you, Juris. Elizaveta's totally annoyed by this. Her mood is just like annoyed, disgusted.
It's her vibe.
Juris is like, but I have to be vulgar with you. It is my only enjoyment I have in this place. Grigory starts to settle into what Nikolai thinks is the shape of this big man's body with 3 bear heads on top and 2 sets of arms that cross. He tells them that they endured all of this, what he calls purgatory, because they assumed that when the Darkling died, they would be released. The Darkling had a long list of enemies, so they didn't really think they would be there that long. He thinks that the Darkling went on to grow to be as powerful as they were. Juris doesn't like that. Even Elizaveta's like, maybe when, we were in our youth, but not like we are now. Elizaveta says that when the Darkling died, their bonds to this place did not break. They were still prisoners of the fold. And that is because the Darkling's power lived on in Nikolai. So, they came here for answers. They got answers. All of the things that they thought were true, or maybe not even true, were these far-off stories, possibilities, are real. Saints are Grisha, this spot is sacred, Nikolai has a piece of the Darkling inside of him. So naturally, Nikolai thinks he has to die. Juris says that they can't kill him because they're worried it would cause a lot of more unrest in Ravka than is already there. And they don't want to see more people die if it isn't necessary. And they're not even sure if they kill Nikolai if the piece of the Darkling would still live, because it already lived on once before. Only way they can get it out is by burning it out. Nikolai's like, yes, the burning thorn. At, a religious reference, Yuri's like,
it's true. All of it's true. This is the site of the thornwood where the priest guard came.
Nikolai's like, good job, Yuri. You get your wish. You get to put me on a pyre. Elizaveta's like, pyre? No pyre. The thornwood is older than all of them and all of their magic. The wood from this place made the very first altars. It's what the walls of the little palace are constructed from. So I'm wondering too, does that give the little palace a little extra, like something, like a little extra power maybe? protection. Well, the Darkling proved that there wasn't much protection. Elizaveta says that there are actually roots that survive beneath the fold, and for the ritual she can make them rise. But then it's going to be up to Nikolai to summon the monster from within himself and slay it. Top of everything else, you gotta summon this demon that you have barely any control over.
That one time you did have control over it, you don't even acknowledge it.
And then you gotta slay it. This takes me back to my dear little baby, Tolia's Garden of Fear. In one of the first few chapters of the book, Tolia talks to Nikolai about how he has to go down in the elevator because he has to face his fear. He has to tend to his Garden of Fear so it doesn't overgrow. And this makes Nikolai wonder, will I ever have to face my Garden of Fear? Will I ever have to face the monster within? Yes, Nikolai. Yes, you are. Zoya snaps out of it again and is like, you created those miracles. You are the ones that did that just to bring us here? Yuri's like,
Yay, the saints! That was promised!
Elizaveta says that their power can reach beyond the fold, but only in places where they're still worshipped. Zoya's a little unsure about this. Risha's power never relied on faith. Juris isn't so sure about that, and he keeps calling her Little Witch. So Zoe is giving Juris a death glare at this point, which gives Nikolai a little bit of relief because his girl, his commander, his general, is at least coming back from whatever was going on. Like, I'm dying to get into a Zoya chapter to get her point of view, to really know what's going on inside her head.
Oh.
And let's not forget, the night that Nikolai escaped, and there was that whole ordeal at the bell tower, when Zoya first got to that village, she noticed a statue of Juris fighting the dragon, like in the town square or town center. And she noted that Juris was just a big bully, and she never really liked that story, that she felt bad for the dragon. So, not surprised she's not getting along with Juris from the start. Nikolai regrets to inform everybody that his monster does not listen to him. So Juris tells him, you have to teach it to. Elizaveta goes on to tell them more about the ritual. Once she makes the thorns rise, they'll wrap around Nikolai and pierce his body. If he doesn't vanquish the shadow demon inside of him at this point, then he'll burn to death from the inside out. Which was quite like Saint Felice, the apple bough guy. And suddenly to Nikolai, just burning on a pyre doesn't seem so bad. Zoya's kind of finally coming back to herself. She's asking what Nikolai's chances of survival are. Like they said, they don't want to destabilize Ravka, but Zoya says that's not an answer. Is he going to live or die? Elizaveta says it's extremely perilous, that there are ways that they can prepare him for the trial, but they can't make any promises about his safety. Jurtis is like, if he even emerges at all. And of course, Elizaveta's annoyed, like, why would you tell them that? We're trying to get this guy to do this thing, like possibly sacrifice himself for us to be free, and you're not really selling it here, buddy. But Juris just wants them all to know what they're getting into, which is kind of nice. So once Nikolai is skewered and roasted and he's wrestling with his demon, the Darkling's power should finally be eradicated. The boundaries of the Unsea will break, life at the fold will return, and all of our saints will be free. Zoya, ever our general, says free to do what exactly? Juris says power always comes with a price. Elizaveta isn't really happy about this, but she says that they'll be mortal once they exit the fold, without even any Grisha power, so they'll live very human lives and have very human deaths. Zoya's still suspicious. I am too, and wonders why they would be so willing to give up that power. Elizaveta's bitter about this. I'm kind of concerned that she doesn't quite want to go along with this. I don't think she really wants to be mortal. But she says that they all spent hundreds of years debating this, going over the possibilities, and that they just can't go on the way they are now. What the universe demands for their freedom is a half-life. Juris is happy about this though. He thinks one eternity is more than enough. He wants to age and die and do very human things like swim in the sea and fall in love. Death is a realm that he hasn't explored yet, so he's kind of excited about it. Grigory is very sensible though. He says that it isn't just Nikolai's life at risk, but Ravka's as well. If they failed, they could just as easily create a tear like the Darkling did, which means that the Unsee would actually spill its borders and go out farther than it did before. Elizaveta says the spill might happen anyway though, because the demon inside of Nikolai is so unpredictable. It's getting stronger and they don't know what kind of reaction it might trigger, because everything is connected to the making of the heart of the world. And the chapter ends with Grigory being like, you might want to discuss this, take the time, discuss this amongst yourselves. It's a pretty big deal.
Nope.
Nikolai's like, nothing to discuss here. When do we start?
What?
So willing to just sacrifice himself. Or maybe he's just really willing to get this demon out, get it over and done with. So I have questions. I don't know if these saints are up to no good. Or maybe one of them is up to no good and has some seedier motives than the other two. Elizaveta isn't really happy about the idea of mortality. Grigory seems pretty cool. He's like pretty chill, but we're not really getting a lot from him. Like, I feel like I don't know him as well as the other two already, so, But I was wrong about Isaac, so not always the quiet ones. And Juris is just Juris right now. Like, he definitely could have ulterior motives, but that might be too obvious. And if you're stuck in this horrible, unfeeling wasteland that you just described as purgatory for 400 years, wouldn't you just do anything to get out? I'm just wondering if they're actually telling them the whole truth. And back to Elizaveta, like, she's not happy about this. I mean, I wouldn't be happy about it either. Think of what Elizaveta went through. I mean, being eaten by a bear is pretty terrible, but I feel like she had it really bad. She was drawn and quartered just because she couldn't use her power again. And is one of them somehow in cahoots with the Darkling? When is he gonna show up? Like, I don't think that it's just this demon living inside of Nikolai. I feel like he's around somewhere. But was just that little piece strong enough to go and see Yuri?
Or was that not even the Darkling?
But let's not forget, Nikolai's beast demon darkling thing inside of him is getting stronger. And I think that's why it was able to speak to Zoya with the darkling's voice and why he was so intent on getting revenge. There's just a lot going on right now. A lot to take in, a lot to absorb. We're going to get even more perspective from all of this whenever we finally get to another Zoya chapter. So thank you very much for joining me for another chapter by chapter King of Scars. Feel free to like and subscribe and comment down below. I hope you guys come back for the next chapter because, like I said, we are really getting into this book. A lot of stuff is going on. There's a lot to break down, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about it. See you guys next time.